Hello everyone, it's Maha. Really wonderful to connect with you in this way once again. I was inspired to make a really quick video this morning and share with you something I read in one of the books I'm reading. And it kind of made me connect to the place where we can sometimes find ourselves getting into in our minds, which represents the Eight of Swords for me. One of my favorite depictions of the Eight of Swords is from the Mary Altero deck, which is this one right here. I love the Mary Altero for the fact that it really allows me to interpret the cards in an intuitive way, and this is one of the cards I right away really grasped when I first saw it in this particular deck. That feeling that that I'm behind these metal gates, that there is this beautiful scenery outside, that castle, that road leading to the castle, open field, mountains, blue sky, water, such a beautiful scenery, yet I'm behind these metal bars in this gate, which actually looks like it's a kind of a beautiful gate. Perhaps it comes from a garden or something inside, but I'm behind the gate, and the gates, as you can see, there's no locks on these gates. It might even be just simple to just push them gently and open it up, but I'm not doing that. I'm just looking from the inside, looking outside. And then I notice these flowers, these iris flowers just right here, and then those roses outside the gate. The iris represents a lot of times the intellect and wisdom, and roses represent passion and love, red roses especially. So it makes me think that perhaps by using the wisdom of my intellect, which is inside here, that space, that interior space, I can open up the gates to love, open up the gates to reach my passions, take refuge in love, in this beautiful landscape here. The Eight of Swords, to me, represents that mental space where we can sometimes find ourselves, where we're stuck in judgment or in limiting beliefs, and it's all coming from inside ourselves. We're allowing these beliefs to keep us caged inside. I'm reading a book recently by Tara Brach called Radical Acceptance. I've been following Tara Brach's teachings for quite a few years. I've been following all her podcasts and her channel on YouTube. I've probably watched all her videos at least once, if not more. I find her a great teacher. I'm going to put this particular book in the description menu for you if you want to check it out. I wanted to read you just a few passages from this book. And perhaps as I read, you can just reflect on the Eight of Swords, see what comes up for you. So this is from chapter 2, Awakening from Trance, the Path of Radical Acceptance. It starts off with a quote. "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change." Carl Rogers. Now this story here that this chapter starts off with actually made me have tears rolling down my eyes when I first read it. It's a very powerful story. Mohini was a regal white tiger who lived for many years at the Washington, D.C. National Zoo. By the way, Tara has she has told this story a few times if you've watched any of her videos or if you followed any of her podcasts, but I always find that hearing a story more than once helps me to grasp the richer meanings behind the story even more. For most of those years, her home was in the old lion house, a typical 12 by 12 foot cage with iron bars and a cement floor. Mohini spent her days pacing restlessly back and forth in her cramped quarters. Eventually, biologists and staff worked together to create a natural habitat for her. Covering several acres, it had hills, trees, a pond, and a variety of vegetation. With excitement and anticipation, they released Mohini into her new and expansive environment. But it was too late. The tiger immediately sought refuge in a corner of the compound where she lived for the remainder of her life. Mohini paced and paced in that corner until an area 12 by 12 feet was worn bare of grass. Perhaps the biggest tragedy in our lives is that freedom is possible, yet we can pass our years trapped in the same old patterns. Entangled in the trance of unworthiness, we grow accustomed to caging ourselves in with self-judgment and anxiety, with restlessness and dissatisfaction. Like Mohini, we grow incapable of accessing the freedom and peace that are our birthright. We may want to love other people without holding back, to feel authentic, to breathe in the beauty around us, to dance and sing. Yet each day we listen to inner voices that keep our life small. Even if we were to win millions of dollars in the lottery or marry the perfect person, as long as we feel not good enough, we won't be able to enjoy the possibilities before us. Unlike Mohini, however, we can learn to recognize when we are keeping ourselves trapped by our own beliefs and fears. We can see how we are wasting our precious lives. The way out of the cage begins with accepting absolutely everything about ourselves and about our lives by embracing the wakefulness and care, our moment-to-moment experience. By accepting absolutely everything, what I mean is that we are aware of what is happening within our body and mind in any given moment, without trying to control or judge or pull away. I do not mean that we're putting up with harmful behavior, our own or another's. This is an inner process of accepting our actual present moment experience. It means feeling sorrow and pain without resisting. It means feeling desire or dislike for someone or something without judging ourselves for feeling or being driven to act at it. Radical acceptance flies in the face of our conditioned reactions. When physical or emotional pain arises, our reflex is to resist it, not only by stiffening our body, but by contracting our muscles, but also by contracting our mind. We lose ourselves in the thoughts about what is wrong, how long it will last, what we should do about it, and how the pain reflects our unworthiness. And here is where I really identify with this. A physical pain such as a backache or a migraine might turn into a commentary on how we don't know how to take care of ourselves, how we don't eat well or exercise enough. The pain might make us feel like a victim. It might tell us we can't count on our body, that things will always go wrong. In the same way, we amplify emotional pain with our judgment and stories. Feeding fear or anger or jealousy means something is wrong with us, that we are weak or bad. And I'm just going to read it a little bit more. When we get lost in our stories, we lose touch with our actual experience. And then it just goes on. And this is really beautiful, just the ending here. Leaning into the future or rehashing the past, we leave the living experience of the immediate moment. Our trance deepens as we move through the day driven by, I have to do more to be okay, or I am incomplete, I need more to be happy. These mantras reinforce the trance belief that our life should be different from what it is. So, I don't know how much of this you connected to as I was reading, but so much of what I'm reading in this book really rings true for me, in that a lot of times I find that in my head I'm trying to find what is wrong even when there isn't anything wrong, or I'm looking for more things to do, accomplishing more, doing things. And that quote that I read from the beginning of this chapter, really just beginning to accept is easier once we acknowledge what is happening, what is actually taking place. The fact that we are, as Tara Brach puts it, going to the trance of unworthiness. She gives some questions here in another chapter, questions for reflections, and it's amazing how much of our days go on not accepting parts of ourselves or our lives. And you know, you guys, you might know, if you've been following my channel, that the path of mindfulness and mindful self-compassion has been a strong part of my practice for the past 2 years. And I've committed myself to really, I made a promise to myself that I practice compassion, self-compassion on a regular day-to-day basis. And I find it tremendously rewarding, because one of the things is a lot of times when we're working, doing shadow work, my difficulty, my challenge was always, you know, once I uncover the shadow parts of myself, how do I then accept them? How do I really and truly accept them? And it's one thing to, of course, do all that shadow work, do all that deep inner work, and bring it to the surface. Then acknowledging and accepting it is also, I think, maybe in a way goes hand in hand with shadow work. That, and it's like someone said it once best, that shadow work never ends. I think it was Rosy Moon. She has a channel here. I'm gonna try to link her channel as well. She said that shadow work never really ends, and I think that's true. Shadow work is always like a continual life, ongoing work. So some of these questions that she's put together here, it's really interesting. I'm going to read you some. And maybe as I read them to you, you can perhaps see how much of this goes on with you on an everyday basis even. Do I accept my body as it is? Do I blame myself when I get sick? Do I feel I'm not attractive enough? Am I dissatisfied with how my hair looks? Such a simple thing, but really it's a small thing, yet it can be deep. Am I dissatisfied? Am I embarrassed about how my face and body are aging? Do I judge myself for being too heavy, underweight, physically unfit? Do I accept my mind as it is? Do I judge myself for not being intelligent enough, not interesting enough? Am I critical of myself for having obsessive thoughts, having a repetitive, boring mind? Am I ashamed of myself for having bad thoughts, mean, mental, or judgmental, or lusty thoughts? Do I consider myself a bad meditator because my mind is so busy? Do I accept my emotions and moods as they are? Is it okay for me to cry, to feel insecure and vulnerable? Do I condemn myself for getting depressed? Am I ashamed of feeling jealous? Am I critical of myself for being impatient, irritable, intolerant? Do I feel my anger or anxiety as a sign that I am not progressing on my spiritual path? Do I feel I'm a bad person because of the ways I behave? Do I hate myself when I act in a self-centered or hurtful way? Am I ashamed of my outbursts of anger? Do I feel disgusted with myself when I eat compulsively? When I smoke cigarettes or drink too much alcohol? Anyway, it goes on, and there's a whole list, and so it's amazing how often we can even judge ourselves when we feel we are being bad. So that's what I wanted to share with you. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I would love to, as always, hear your comments. Take care and be well.